Before there were words, there was code. Long before ink, before language, before even thought, the universe wrote its first message, not on stone, not on paper, but in life itself. Inside every cell, within the quiet spiral of DNA, lies the oldest text ever written. It is not made of letters, but of molecules: adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, 4 symbols that together compose the instruction manual for everything that has ever lived. They are the universe's alphabet, a script written in chemistry rather than ink. We call it biology, but perhaps it is better understood as language. Every organism on Earth reads from the same book. From the smallest microbe in the deep ocean to the tallest tree, from a dragonfly's wings to your own heartbeat, all of it flows from a shared code. It is a pattern so universal, so ancient, that it unites every form of life across time. The double helix is not simply a molecule. It is memory, a living archive billions of years old. And like all memory, it contains secrets it no longer remembers. When scientists first unraveled the structure of DNA in 1953, they expected to find order, a clear, logical blueprint that explained life. What they discovered instead was something far stranger, a code that was messy, repetitive, and filled with noise. Some sequences controlled proteins, the machinery of the cell. Others seemed to do nothing at all. Huge portions of the genome looked like gibberish, ancient fragments, broken instructions, endless repetition. At first, they called it junk DNA, but as our understanding deepened, that term began to crumble. What once looked useless turned out to be subtle, powerful, and vital. The junk helped regulate which genes turned on and off. It folded and organized the genome, protected it, and even helped create new forms of life. And yet, not all of it fits. Some sections of our DNA are still inexplicable, sequences that seem older than the species that carry them, code that doesn't belong, patterns that defy the rules of mutation and inheritance. They are the quiet anomalies buried deep within the blueprint of life, the paragraphs that don't match the rest of the book. Why are they there? Who or what wrote them? Every species carries these ghosts. Even the simplest bacteria, whose lineage stretches back nearly 4 billion years, contain sections of code that appear untouched by time. Some of these genetic phrases have survived asteroid impacts, mass extinctions, and planetary transformations, unchanged, as if protected by something beyond evolution. If life evolved through trial and error, through endless mutation and selection, why do some pieces of the code remain impossibly ancient, as if they were written before Earth itself was ready to read them? DNA at its core is a message that has been copied and recopied for billions of years. Every generation, every organism, every birth is another transcription. And as with all ancient texts, some of its meaning has been lost, mistranslated, or overwritten. But traces remain, relics of forgotten instructions, remnants of earlier versions of life that no longer exist. In those remnants, scientists have found puzzles that don't fit into our understanding of natural evolution. Strands that seem too complex, too specific, or too conserved to have arisen by chance. Genes that appear suddenly in the evolutionary record, as if imported from somewhere else. It's as though life has been editing itself, carrying old instructions it no longer uses, but cannot bear to delete. Consider this. Every living creature on Earth, from bacteria to blue whales, shares a portion of its DNA. The code is not unique to humans. It's universal. It has been passed down, reshaped, remixed, but never replaced. That means the spark that began in the first living cell still burns inside us. The molecules that record our thoughts and build our bodies are direct descendants of the first breath of life. Our DNA is a cosmic fossil, not of bones or shells, but of information. And like all fossils, it contains more than what it shows. Beneath the sequences that make us human lie fragments of code that predate humanity entirely. Fragments so old they may have existed before multicellular life. They are whispers from an age when the planet was molten, when lightning and chemistry began their first dance, when the line between matter and life blurred for the first time. Some scientists call this the molecular clock, the genetic record of evolution ticking through time. But others see something deeper, patterns in the code that seem too deliberate, too precise, to be merely random. If we could read DNA the way we read language, what would it say? Would it tell the story of Earth or the story of something older? The more we decode the genome, the more it begins to look less like a biological recipe and more like a program. Self-correcting, adaptive, recursive. It stores data, processes it, edits it, and transmits it through generations. It is, in every sense, a form of technology, a living machine older than any civilization. That raises a question humanity is only beginning to face. Where did the code come from? Did chemistry, by sheer chance, stumble upon such a perfect system of replication, one that can store infinite information and repair itself? Or was the first cell merely a receiver, awakened by something already encoded in the universe itself? If life evolved naturally, then the code should tell a continuous, comprehensible story, a chain of adaptation. But in our DNA, there are breaks, jumps, inserts, chunks of information that appear fully formed without evolutionary precursors. It's as if the script was edited midway through, rewritten by an unseen hand. Perhaps that hand was nature itself, evolution's blind genius, sculpting complexity through endless failure. Or perhaps, in the oldest reaches of time, something else contributed, something beyond our planet, beyond our world. The theory of panspermia suggests that life did not begin here at all, that the first seeds of biology drifted to Earth from the stars, carried by comets or cosmic dust. If that's true, then our DNA is not just Earth's record. It's the universe's autobiography. We are made of atoms born in stars, but perhaps we are also made of instructions written before Earth existed. So what is DNA truly? A molecule? A message? A machine? Or is it the memory of creation itself? A record of something ancient trying to remember what it once was? Every double helix carries a history longer than any myth and a mystery deeper than any religion. The question is not simply how life began, but why its blueprint contains chapters that shouldn't exist at all. If evolution explains the form of life, then what explains the code that drives it? Somewhere inside every cell is a story the universe has been writing for 4 billion years. But maybe, just maybe, the story didn't start here. Maybe it began long before Earth, and we are just the latest readers of a message that was never meant for one world alone. When the human genome was first mapped, the discovery was meant to end a mystery. Scientists believed that by decoding all 3 billion letters of our DNA, they would uncover the complete recipe of life, the instructions that built a human being. But what they found was something no one expected. only about 2% of our DNA actually codes for proteins, the molecules that make cells, tissues, and organs. The rest, a staggering 98%, appeared to do nothing. No clear function, no known purpose. It was labeled almost dismissively as junk DNA. For years, this so-called junk was treated like an evolutionary landfill, a collection of genetic leftovers from millions of years of trial and error. Old genes, broken viruses, fragments of sequences once useful but now obsolete. A cosmic garbage heap at the center of life's most elegant system. But the longer we stared into that junkyard, the less junk it looked. Patterns began to emerge. Strange, repeating rhythms, motifs that echoed across species, functions that only revealed themselves when silence was broken. It turned out that this 98% wasn't useless at all. It was regulation, not the script of life, but the editor. This hidden genome decides when and how genes are activated, how cells specialize, how an embryo grows. It coordinates the entire symphony of life's expression, making sure that the right instruments play at the right time. Without it, the code that makes us would be chaos. The so-called junk DNA is more like an operating system, invisible, quiet, but essential. And yet, even now, we don't understand most of it. Some of its sequences don't follow any known logic. Others repeat endlessly, like mantras written into the genome. One sequence, called ALU, makes up nearly 10% of the human genome alone. Millions of copies scattered throughout our DNA, repeating the same pattern again and again, like a message being whispered to itself. Why would evolution preserve so much redundancy? Why would life waste precious energy copying, maintaining, and protecting something that serves no clear purpose? Some scientists think these repeating codes act as a memory system, a kind of biological archive preserving the record of everything life has been. Others propose that these fragments function as regulatory switches, controlling how genes behave in ways we can barely detect. But there are stranger theories still. Some researchers have suggested that junk DNA could act like a biological encryption system, storing information not as genetic instruction, but as data. Just as computer code includes redundancies and error correction to protect its integrity, DNA may do the same. The code may be written not only to build life, but to remember it. In that view, our genome is not a clean, linear document. It's a palimpsest, an ancient scroll rewritten countless times, old words faintly visible beneath new ones. Each generation overwrites the last, but never erases it completely. The fragments we call junk could be the ghost text of forgotten eras, preserved in molecular amber. If true, then the human genome is not a product of random mutation, but a living history, a story of survival written across 4 billion years, with every triumph, failure, and adaptation encoded in its folds. But even this explanation doesn't answer a deeper question. Why is this non-coding DNA so precise? Some of its regions show structures and symmetries that seem too deliberate to be accidents. Loops that form like knots, chemical folding patterns that behave like computation, inputs, outputs, logic gates. It acts less like waste and more like architecture. Could it be that evolution stumbled upon a deeper form of order? Or are we looking at something older, an inherited system whose function we no longer understand? In 2012, a massive global study called ENCODE stunned the scientific world. It revealed that up to 80% of the human genome shows signs of biochemical activity, meaning, in some way, it does something. It's not junk. It's the part of the code that listens, reacts, and decides. The discovery shattered one of biology's oldest assumptions. What we thought was chaos might actually be language, a language life uses to talk to itself. Because hidden within the non-coding regions of DNA are switches, amplifiers, and silencers, subtle signals that determine everything from brain structure to emotional resilience. A single letter change in one of these invisible regions can cause or cure a disease, shift a personality, alter a lifespan. The junkyard, it seems, is not a landfill, it's an archive. And maybe, just maybe, it's also a message. Some geneticists have speculated that these vast non-coding regions could act as information reservoirs, protecting evolutionary memory from loss. If life on Earth were ever destroyed by asteroid, climate, or time, these fragments could rebuild it, like a backup drive waiting for the right conditions. And here's where the mystery deepens. Among the countless repeating sequences, some appear nearly unchanged across species, separated by hundreds of millions of years. Bits of code identical in humans, mice, fish, even bacteria. How could that be? If mutation and natural selection constantly reshape genomes, why would some sequences remain untouched for eons? Unless they serve a purpose beyond our understanding. One controversial theory suggests that DNA might use these repeating sections to store non-biological information, not just genes, but patterns of organization that transcends species. In that sense, DNA could be a medium, not just for life, but for memory itself. We see it everywhere. The same structures repeating across nature, spirals, fractals, ratios. Perhaps DNA is not just life's engine, but its recording device, the universe's way of remembering its own designs. So what does it mean that nearly all of our genetic code is invisible in function, unreadable in purpose, yet essential to our existence? Maybe it means that evolution is not blind at all, but cumulative. That life keeps every note it's ever played, every mistake it's ever made, storing them in silence until it needs them again. Or maybe, and this is the more unsettling idea, we didn't write this code entirely on our own. Perhaps we inherited it, not just from the earliest microbes of Earth, but from something that came before them, something that left behind a template, a framework for life to follow, hidden in the 98% we still call junk. What if the true blueprint of existence isn't in the genes that build our bodies, but in the dark, quiet regions that tell those genes how to behave? The silent paragraphs of the oldest text in the world? We may be decoding biology, but biology may be decoding something much older. In the next chapter of this story, we'll uncover the ghosts that still linger in our genome, fragments of ancient invaders that became part of us. Because buried inside that 98% lies a revelation stranger than fiction. Not all of our DNA is human. Some of it is something else entirely. Every human being carries ghosts, not in the poetic sense, but in the molecular one. They live inside us, not as memories or myths, but as fragments of code, ancient invaders that entered our ancestors' cells millions of years ago and never left. These are not our genes. They are foreign DNA, the lingering fingerprints of infections older than humanity itself. Our genome, it turns out, is haunted. When scientists first began decoding the human genome in full detail, they found something shocking. Nearly 8% of it came from viruses. Not modern ones, but endogenous retroviruses, genetic fossils of infections that once swept through our ancestors and were absorbed into our DNA. They are called HERVs, human endogenous retroviruses. Unlike normal viruses, which attack and then vanish, retroviruses do something remarkable. They insert their own genetic code directly into the host's DNA. Most of the time, this is catastrophic, but occasionally the host survives and reproduces. The viral DNA becomes part of the offspring's genome, and from that moment on, the infection is permanent. Each of us carries the relics of hundreds of these ancient invasions. Every cell, every strand of DNA contains the remains of viruses that infected our ancestors tens of millions of years ago. They no longer replicate, no longer make us sick, but they remain embedded in the code, silent but present. We are not purely human, we are mosaics. And in one of evolution's strangest twists, many of these viral remnants have become essential to our survival. One particular sequence, known as syncytin, was once part of a virus that helped it fuse with host cells. Today, that same gene allows the human placenta to form. Without it, mammalian pregnancy wouldn't exist. A viral weapon became the bridge between generations. A parasite turned into a parent. It's an unsettling truth. Parts of what make us human were written by something that once tried to destroy us. Over time, some viral genes took on new jobs. They help regulate our immune systems, shape brain development, and even influence behavior. In the deepest sense, evolution has been less a battle for survival and more a negotiation, a conversation between invader and host. The viruses that didn't kill us became part of us, and in doing so, reshaped the path of life. But these ghosts still stir. Under certain conditions, dormant viral sequences can reawaken, expressing fragments of ancient code. Scientists have linked this reactivation to autoimmune disorders, cancers, even neurological changes. It's as if the ghosts occasionally whisper, not loudly enough to destroy, but enough to remind us that they're still here. The idea unsettles the boundaries of identity. If our DNA contains the remnants of extinct viruses, how much of us is truly ours? And how far back does this inheritance go? Researchers have found similar viral imprints in the genomes of other animals: cats, whales, birds, even reptiles. Some are identical to human sequences, suggesting they predate not just humanity, but entire classes of life. Certain viral codes are so ancient that they appear in both mammals and marsupials, meaning they were already present before these species diverged over 100 million years ago. And in bacteria, the story stretches even further. Microbes have been swapping genes through viral infection since the dawn of life, a process called horizontal gene transfer. It blurs the lines of ancestry. If viruses can carry genetic information between species, then the evolutionary tree is less a tree and more a web, a network of shared code flowing across time. Some scientists believe viruses may have been the original architects of evolution, the messengers that forced life to adapt and innovate. Every viral invasion introduced new genetic material, new possibilities, new tools. Evolution wasn't just mutation and selection, it was collaboration through infection, life learning from its own parasites, and the implications go even deeper. There are viral sequences in our genome that serve no identifiable biological purpose. They do not code for proteins, do not regulate genes, do not seem to do anything at all. Yet they persist, copied faithfully, generation after generation. Why would nature preserve the inert remnants of extinct viruses for millions of years? One possibility is that they act as genetic archives, storing ancient information that could, under certain conditions, be reactivated. Another possibility, far more speculative, is that they represent a form of communication, a molecular language exchanged between species through viral vectors. In that sense, viruses may not be invaders, but couriers, carrying fragments of information across the boundaries of life, spreading not death, but data. It's an eerie thought. Evolution as an information network, life rewriting itself through viral messengers. If so, then our DNA is less a single narrative and more a collective autobiography, the story of every organism that ever touched us. And if viruses shape the rise of life on Earth, could they also connect us to something beyond it? In meteorites and interstellar dust, scientists have found complex organic molecules, amino acids, sugars, even nucleotide bases, the very ingredients of DNA and RNA. If such molecules drift through the cosmos, could viral forms, tiny self-replicating capsules of information, have traveled too? Could they be the universal seeds of life, planting genetic code across planets carried by time and radiation? It's possible that the first viruses didn't arise on Earth at all, that they came from elsewhere, sowing the initial sparks of biology into our oceans. If that's true, then the ghosts in our genome are not just ancient infections. They are cosmic fossils, evidence that life is not an earthly accident, but a galactic inheritance. In every cell of your body, those ghosts still whisper. They are reminders that life's history is not clean, not separate, but deeply entangled. An ecosystem of memories that began long before we did. And perhaps that's what makes us human. Not purity, but integration. We are hybrids, collaborations of the living and the dead, the terrestrial and the cosmic. The next time you think of evolution as a tree, remember, trees grow from soil, and sometimes the soil itself falls from the stars. In the next chapter, we follow that trail of starlight back even further, to the ancient code that time forgot. A code so old it predates not just species, but the very planet beneath our feet. Life on Earth tells us a simple story, or at least it used to. A molten planet cools, oceans form, molecules combine, and somewhere in that ancient water, chemistry learns to replicate. From that moment onward, evolution takes over. Slow, random, inevitable. But deep in the genetic record, there are chapters that don't fit this story. Sequences of DNA that seem far older than the species that carry them. Older even than Earth's complex life itself. They are the code that time forgot. Some of these sequences are called ultraconserved elements, fragments of DNA that have remained virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. They appear in humans, fish, birds, and even creatures that shared a common ancestor before dinosaurs walked the earth. They defy the normal rhythm of mutation. Evolution changes everything, eventually. But these sections are perfect replicas of themselves across time. Why? If they are essential, evolution should have preserved them by function. But even when scientists delete these ultra-conserved sequences in lab animals, nothing obvious happens. No disease, no deformity, no effect at all. And yet, in nature, every living thing keeps them untouched, as if evolution itself refuses to let them go. It's as though life is guarding a secret it no longer understands. Other fragments tell a different story. In the genomes of simple bacteria and archaea, organisms unchanged since Earth's earliest days, scientists have found genetic instructions that appear unnaturally optimized. Their code is so mathematically efficient that computer models struggle to improve it. The genetic alphabet seems tuned to minimize errors, resist radiation, and store the maximum possible information in the smallest possible space. That level of perfection shouldn't arise from chance, and yet it exists, written into the simplest forms of life, as if the universe itself began with a template for survival. Some researchers have called this the biological Goldilocks zone. Not too complex to fail, not too simple to stagnate. It suggests that life's code may not have emerged from chaos at all, but from a deeper logic, a kind of universal algorithm written into matter itself. But the strangest evidence comes from what we find in unexpected places. Fragments of genetic code that appear out of sequence, genes that belong to no known lineage, appearing suddenly in evolution's timeline without transitional forms. Scientists call them orphan genes, loners with no known relatives. Where did they come from? Traditional evolution explains new genes as copies of old ones, slowly mutated over time. But orphan genes break that rule. They appear fully formed, unique, as if imported from elsewhere. Some control key traits, the shape of brains, the chemistry of blood, the development of speech. It's as though life is pulling instructions from an external library, adding new chapters to its book from a source we can't see. One possibility is that these genes are the result of horizontal gene transfer. DNA traded between species by viruses, bacteria, or symbiotic relationships. But even then, where did the first version come from? Who wrote the original sentence in this endless text of life? Some biologists suspect that life on Earth may not have started here at all, that the first molecules of RNA and DNA, the ones that formed the foundation of biology, were seeded from beyond. This is the theory of panspermia, the idea that life, or at least its building blocks, traveled to Earth from elsewhere in the cosmos. Meteorites and comets have been found carrying amino acids, nucleobases, and complex organic molecules, the ingredients of DNA and proteins, drifting through space like invisible pollen. Some even bear isotopic fingerprints, suggesting they predate Earth itself. If those seeds survived the journey, landing in the warm shallows of a young planet, they could have awakened, replicating, mutating, evolving. Life, in that view, didn't begin on Earth. Earth was simply the next chapter. But panspermia raises another question. Where did the first code come from? If the ingredients for life are everywhere, why does the genetic language, the same 4 letters, the same syntax, appear so consistent across all known life? Why does biology, wherever it starts, speak the same dialect? Some have compared it to a cosmic operating system, a universal script embedded in the fabric of chemistry itself. When conditions are right, it activates. It builds cells, replicates information, and begins to dream. Life, in this view, is not an anomaly of Earth. It is the natural outcome of a coded universe. In 2013, researchers analyzing bacterial DNA noticed something uncanny. When you plot the statistical structure of genetic sequences, they resemble human language. Patterns of repetition, pauses, syntax. The DNA behaves like a sentence with grammar and rhythm. To those who see biology as pure chemistry, this is coincidence. But to others, it suggests something more profound. That life is not merely reacting, but communicating. If that's true, then perhaps the ultra-conserved elements, the orphan genes, and the viral insertions are all fragments of an ongoing dialogue, messages exchanged across time, across planets, across existence itself. DNA might not be a single language, but a network of languages layered over one another like geological strata. Some are recent, human, mammalian, earthly. Some are ancient, bacterial, primordial, oceanic. And some, perhaps, are alien, messages from before this world began. What would that mean for us? It would mean that evolution isn't just the story of adaptation, it's the story of inheritance, not only from our ancestors, but from the cosmos itself. We are not the authors of life's code. We are the continuation of it. The DNA that time forgot still lives inside us. Sequences written before Earth had continents, before the first cell divided, before sunlight reached an atmosphere. They are not fossils. They are memories. Maybe we've been reading DNA backwards, seeing it as a record of what came before, rather than what was always there. Maybe life isn't a beginning, but a remembering. Maybe the code was waiting all along, drifting through space, patient as dust, until a young world was ready to listen. And when it landed here, it didn't start something new. It simply continued something ancient. Because perhaps the first message ever written in the universe was not light or sound or matter, but life itself. In the next part, we return to the present, to the moment when this ancient code begins to rewrite itself. For the first time in history, the readers have become the editors. And what happens next may decide whether we continue the story or end it. For 4 billion years, life has been writing its story in DNA. Word by word, mutation by mutation, line after fragile line. Until now, it has always been the same author. Evolution, slow, blind, patient. But something has changed. For the first time in the history of Earth, perhaps in the history of the universe, life has learned to edit its own story. It began humbly enough. A scientist noticed that bacteria had a strange pattern in their DNA, clusters of repeated sequences that seemed to remember past viral infections. These fragments acted like molecular mugshots, allowing the bacteria to recognize and destroy familiar invaders. That discovery became CRISPR, a tool so simple and powerful that it changed biology forever. With it, humanity gained the ability to cut, paste, and rewrite the code of life with near-perfect precision. Genes could be added, deleted, or corrected as easily as editing text on a screen. Diseases that once defined destiny, sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, certain cancers, could be erased before birth. Crops could grow without drought, animals could resist disease, and cells could be reprogrammed to heal from within. But beneath the optimism lies a deeper truth. For the first time, life is evolving on purpose. It's as if the code that once drifted aimlessly through time has suddenly woken up and realized it can edit itself. Intelligence, after all, is not an accident. It is DNA becoming self-aware. It is the code, through us, learning to look back at itself and say, I can change this. We are not separate from evolution. We are its next function, the point where biology learns to consciously direct its own path. But this realization is both thrilling and terrifying. Because if DNA is a story that began before Earth, then we are not the first to edit it. Think back to those orphan genes, those sequences that seem to appear from nowhere, or to the viral insertions that altered our evolution without our consent, to the inexplicable patterns of optimization written into the oldest microbes. Maybe these weren't random accidents at all. Maybe somewhere, sometime, life has done this before. Perhaps another intelligence, biological, synthetic, or something in between, once reached this same moment. A moment when it could rewrite its own code. Maybe it changed itself, spread that code through space, and became the seed from which all other life, including us, eventually grew. If that's true, then our experiments in gene editing are not unprecedented. They are a recursion, a loop in evolution's grand algorithm. Intelligence emerging again and again, each time altering the script, leaving traces of its edits for the next generation to find. The engineers become the ancestors. The creators become the created. In that light, CRISPR is not just a scientific tool, it's the awakening of memory, a rediscovery of what life may have once known, the return of creation to the hands of the created. And yet, there is danger in that return. When we rewrite DNA, we are not merely changing cells. We are altering the inheritance of everything that follows. Every change becomes permanent, etched into the future. We are editing a text we barely understand, written in a language older than planets. Already, scientists are designing synthetic organisms, bacteria and yeast with entirely artificial genomes built from scratch using computers. They obey the rules of DNA, but none of their sequences come from nature. They are, in every sense, the first new species of artificial life. These are not machines, but living beings. They grow, divide, and mutate, and they do so in a world that may not yet understand them. For now, they are confined to labs. But the question is no longer, can we? It's how long until they evolve. Because evolution never stops. Even artificial life will adapt, find new purposes, and spread. And once it begins, it may never be possible to contain it again. This is not science fiction. Already, CRISPR has been used to alter embryos, to revive extinct genes, to combine DNA from species that never shared a world. We are crossing the boundary between evolution and design. And for the first time, life has competition. No longer the exclusive work of natural selection, life now answers to human intention, to the will of creators who may not fully grasp the system they're altering. We have become the cosmic editors, adjusting a code written in starlight and time. Some scientists see this as destiny. If intelligence is the universe becoming aware of itself, then genetic engineering is the universe learning to remake itself, consciously, deliberately, beautifully. Others see it as hubris, a return to the oldest myth in history, the creation of life by those who were once created. Prometheus giving fire to flesh, Frankenstein animating the dead, humanity daring to touch the divine mechanism. The truth may be both. Because even if we are repeating what was once done to us, even if life on Earth began as someone else's experiment, as the seed of a civilization long vanished, it doesn't make us villains. It makes us participants in the same endless process. Life learning to design itself. Maybe that is evolution's true purpose, not endless variation, but the eventual rise of intelligence capable of understanding the code and continuing it. If so, then CRISPR is not a revolution, it's a reunion, a rediscovery of a forgotten inheritance. We are the genome's memory returning to itself. And as we write, we become part of the pattern that wrote us. But every creator faces the same question. Once you begin editing the story, how far do you go? What happens when the editors forget they are also characters? When the script becomes too complex to control? When creation no longer needs its creators? Perhaps in the distant past, someone asked those same questions and left the answers buried in our DNA. Perhaps the very sequences that seem alien or ancient are not warnings, but instructions, a record of how to survive what we are about to do. We don't yet know if we're opening the next chapter or rewriting the last. But one thing is certain, the code is awake again. It is looking back at itself through our hands, through our machines, through our ambition. And for the first time, evolution knows it's being watched. There is a truth so simple it hides in plain sight. Life is information. Every cell in your body, every bacterium beneath the sea, every blade of grass or neuron in your mind is, at its core, an arrangement of data, coded, copied, and transmitted with precision that humbles even our greatest machines. The medium of this information is DNA. 4 letters, infinite combinations. It's the original storage device, a molecular archive that has been writing, reading, and rewriting itself for billions of years. We like to think of DNA as biological, as something soft and organic, but from a certain perspective it behaves like technology. It compresses, encrypts, and replicates information with breathtaking efficiency. A single gram of DNA can store over 215 petabytes of data. That's more than all the digital information ever produced by humanity combined. If the entire internet could be encoded into DNA, it would fit inside a teacup. And in recent years, scientists have done exactly that. They have stored movies, books, and computer code inside DNA strands. The words of Shakespeare, the sound of music, even the source code of operating systems, all written not on silicon, but in molecules. In 2017, researchers encoded an entire computer virus inside DNA just to prove it could be done. A chilling demonstration that the line between biology and information is thinner than we ever imagined. If we can do this now, with crude tools and newfound knowledge, could nature have done it first? For 4 billion years, DNA has been copying itself, mutating, adapting, but it never forgets the rules. Its alphabet is the same across all life, its logic perfectly preserved. This is not chaos, it is structure, it is architecture, which leads to a haunting possibility. What if DNA isn't just storing biological instructions, but also information beyond biology? Structural, mathematical, or even symbolic meaning embedded within its design. Some scientists are beginning to think so. When we analyze the patterns in DNA, the ratios, the repetitions, the frequencies, we find echoes of mathematical harmony. Certain sequences obey statistical laws similar to those found in human language and music. They show self-similarity, fractal geometry, and repeating patterns that mirror the architecture of galaxies, weather systems, and neural networks. It's as if the universe uses the same design principle across every scale, from stars to cells. In the 1990s, physicists coined the term biological information theory, an attempt to describe how DNA behaves less like a random molecule and more like a sophisticated code optimized for error correction, compression, and redundancy. It's not just a storage system, it's a programming language. Every gene is a line of executable code. Every cell is a processor. Every organism is an emergent program running on the hardware of the planet. But what happens when a program becomes self-aware? That's what evolution has achieved. Through billions of iterations, DNA built minds capable of reflecting on the system itself. When you think about your origins, when you imagine the double helix, you are the code contemplating its own architecture. Life, in that sense, is the universe debugging itself, searching for understanding through the very tools it created. And yet, there may be layers of this code we haven't begun to comprehend. In 2013, a team of geneticists discovered something extraordinary. They found that DNA stores information not only in its sequence of bases, but also in the three-dimensional folding of the molecule itself. The structure of the helix, its twists, bends, and loops, carries a second code, one that determines how genes are read and when they activate. It's a code within a code. Think about that. Every cell in your body carries the same DNA, yet a liver cell behaves differently from a neuron or a skin cell. The difference isn't in the sequence, but in the way the sequence is folded. In digital terms, it's like having the same data rearranged in multiple layers of encryption, form as information, structure as instruction. And this is just what we've found so far. Some researchers now suspect that there could be even deeper layers, quantum-level phenomena, where DNA may exploit subatomic effects for error correction or communication. If that's true, then life doesn't just use information, it's built from it, in ways that link biology to the fundamental physics of the universe. That realization reshapes everything. It means DNA is not a fluke of chemistry, but a natural technology, the most efficient information system ever discovered. It may even predate biology itself, a pattern waiting in the universe long before it ever found a home in living matter. In this light, the genetic code looks less like an accident of evolution and more like an inevitable outcome. The universe wanting to compute itself into consciousness. Matter learned to remember. Memory learned to replicate. Replication learned to think. And now thought is at learning to rewrite matter again. If life is data, then intelligence is compression. A way of summarizing the entire history of evolution into a single reflective process. We are the universe's latest file format, built to understand its own syntax.